Gonna give those people a moment before I really start roasting this team. I mean, I'm not gonna be. Hopefully, my criticisms are fair and they're based off of what I saw tonight. But I saw a lot of negative shit tonight, and there's a lot of negative shit to address. I would not say the Suns fucking suck. It sure as fuck felt like it at moments. But tonight, I would say was something that was entirely the most negative downside of this game was entirely predicated on our piss poor shooting after starting off the game hot. So I think that we are going to have games like this. This was an atrocious loss, but I'm not saying this is something to. I mean, it's something to be worried about. There are things that need to be addressed very clearly. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a game that necessarily signifies that we're a bad team or that we can't handle a team like the Pistons. Booker has to get more aggressive. He wasn't really until OT. I definitely agree with that. We saw aggressiveness at moments from Book, but we do need to see it more consistently throughout the game, especially in those moments where we're bricking a lot of threes. Self-inflicted loss with crappy 2-8 shooting, second half shooting. Yeah, I definitely I would agree. I think that it was not a pretty game, not only from a player perspective, but from an offensive structure. I think there were an extreme amount of negatives, and I guess I can go ahead and get into them after I respond to these comments. I worry we rely on the three too much like Houston. We will learn to win those close games, but we need to learn to break cold streaks from three. I would not say we definitely do not run the Houston, Dallas, Atlanta type offense of that three out, only shoot threes, but heavily rely on threes. But tonight we heavily relied on threes when they weren't going in, and that significantly hurt us. I do think we need more attacks to the basket, and I'll definitely be talking and addressing that tonight. Booker has a turnover problem, or Booker's turnovers a problem. I definitely agree. Tonight, though, I mean, there were a few sloppy turnovers that he had, but tonight were just like turnovers. Like in the past they've been traveling, they've been double dribbles, they've been carrying, they've been throwing it out of bounds. And tonight his passes were just getting picked off as were most of our team tonight. So that is definitely something to address, or I will be addressing on the stream. Dario had Butterfingers and Book couldn't pass to Ayton. The Booker connection to Ayton has definitely not developed like we would have necessarily liked it to progress over the last 2 or 3 years. But they have their moments, and I do have faith that they will bounce back from this. Some turnovers we made were unreal too. There were definitely some bad turnovers, but I think that D-Book had less of a share of them than in previous games. That's not a good thing, because that just means we were having other piss poor turnovers from other guys on the team. But I don't know if the sloppy turnovers were necessarily Booker, but the bad picked off turnovers were absolutely Booker. I figured this was a trap game. I definitely saw a lot of talk about a trap game, both on Suns Twitter and on our Suns, and it ended up being exactly right. They've had 3 years to develop it. Yeah, no, it's definitely been a little bit underwhelming. I wish they would continue to almost force it, like force that connection. And I'm okay with it being ugly for a while, but I am more concerned when they don't try it, when it's not working and they go away from it despite the fact that we're up 25 in the second quarter. I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm not saying I want D-Book trying to force feed Ayton in the fourth when the connection's not there, but there are moments in the game where we need to see that volume of connection continue to increase, especially like in the second quarter, which we saw today. They should have been focusing on developing that. I mean, we are 0-8. We are 0-8 to them. A trap game. Yeah, I mean, this definitely had all the spellings of a trap game, and it absolutely ended up being one. So I guess I can go ahead into my general thoughts on the game. Again, it was an incredibly disappointing game. I think the thing that was most underwhelming and most fucking painful to watch, just absolutely fucking painful to watch, was us just continuing to jack threes after they stopped going in. I mean, Ernie talked about it on the broadcast, how at one point Cam Johnson snapped a 0-16 three-point run from the Phoenix Suns. That was absolutely fucking egregious to watch. I think that once Mikal and Jay Crowder stopped, or Jay hit a few early, but once he stopped hitting them, and Mikal really never hit them tonight, we continued to settle for those shots. It really killed the flow of our offense. And it was really, really brutal to watch. I absolutely, that's my least favorite thing about watching like Houston games, is those games where they go cold but continue to shoot it. They shoot themselves out of games, and tonight we shot ourselves out of the game. Not only that, but the second most important reason for our loss, out of my perspective, was we continued to be a poor penetration-based defensive team. I think that we look good at times, especially when Ayton is on the floor. He's very solid stepping over and helping. However, there are often times where that backside help does not come early enough, and it's there for the little dish-off, or they're able to get the putback, and that's extremely frustrating to watch. But watching Pascal Siakam drop 35 on us almost entirely off penetration, and then Jerry and Grant turn around, and do essentially the same, going for, I think, 30 tonight, almost primarily off of drives, cuts to the baskets, and little mid-range pull-ups, was fucking infuriating to watch. And I think that there are a lot of points that our defense needs to adjust based off of the penetration that's killing us right now on the defensive end. But one of the things that I would like to see out of the Phoenix Suns is on those games when we're not playing a great shooting team. The Pistons are by no metric, and even based off the talents on their roster, not a good shooting team. However, we continued the theme of rotating early, helping on the perimeter, stopping perimeter shots, and then allowing easier driving lanes. Not necessarily allowing easier driving lanes, but not providing that extra early help on penetration attempts, and that allowed the Raptors to get back into the game against us last game, and it absolutely killed us and was the most significant defensive cause of this loss tonight. I'm super quiet. I definitely apologize for that. I'll turn up the mic. But yeah, no, so we definitely, the penetration is a significant issue, and I've pointed that out against Mikal all season long. That is really where he struggles. He is one of the most elite perimeter defenders, but when it comes to actual penetration, he really struggles. Jay got killed. Faceman 2K3, thank you so much for the subscription. I greatly appreciate that. But we saw tonight Mikal getting killed on the penetration. Jay gave up a shitload of backdoor cuts. I think this was probably Jay Crowder's worst defensive game. And then Saric was kind of getting killed. I understand that the refs weren't especially kind to us, especially for where the Pistons around the rim. But Saric, time and time again, was allowing Blake Griffin to get low post position, which not only drastically increases the percent chance of a foul occurring or foul being called, but it's just kind of hard to stop him at that point. I mean, he's a good finisher and a great passer out of the post. So once he gets that low post position, it's not necessarily over, but it's pretty fucking tough to stop. And Saric was just continually allowing Blake Griffin to get low post touches pretty much throughout the entirety of his minutes. I definitely was extremely underwhelmed by pretty much every single one of our wing players tonight. I think Cam had a fine game. He had a really solid game. I liked what I saw out of him, especially that ending sequence in the fourth quarter where he got the block and then ran the fast break. But outside of Cam, who I think was all right tonight, had a solid game tonight. I think this was Jay Crowder's probably his worst game As a Phoenix Sun, I thought Dario was not awful, but not good tonight. And then Mikal was not only quiet for the first 45 minutes of the game offensively, but his defense really was. It wasn't effective against the Pistons. They don't have many of those East-West guys, and we had him on Grant for a significant amount of time, and Grant was just getting into his body and kind of bullying him on drives, which was unfortunate to see. I'm a big believer that Mikal needs to bulk up to really reach his full potential defensively, which I think would be one of the best defensive players in the league, like a first-team all-defense level player. But I don't think he will reach that until he bulks up, and we saw that in large against Pascal Siakam last game, and then we saw it again tonight with Grant. I'm disappointed in Monty and CP3. Wide did switch it up, run plays to paint, also stupid fouls. I thought this was definitely one of Monty's, maybe Monty's worst game planning game of the season so far, absolutely. He did not make the offensive adjustments necessary, which contributed to us just continually shooting threes when they weren't falling. I really wish I would have seen more off-ball movement. I mean, tonight was one of the games in which the off-ball movement was the most stagnant. We saw that in the second half against the Raptors, and we absolutely saw that tonight. I think our ball movement was still very, very solid, but in terms of the off-ball motion, it left a lot to be desired, especially from what we have seen out of this team. And I think the lack of the off-ball moving off-ball motion absolutely contributed to us settling for threes, especially 15 seconds left in the shot clock. And it was fucking infuriating to watch. I hate that kind of basketball. If the shot's not going in, attack the goddamn basket. And we did in moments, but we did not do it like even close to enough. Sarge and Jay got out-muscled by Blake all game long. Worst game of the year for both of them. I absolutely agree. Ref ball, I mean, again, the refs weren't good. I think there were some extremely questionable calls, two offensive fouls in OT. That over-the-back foul on Ayton, I want to say, in the third quarter was fucking the softest over-the-back call I've ever seen in my entire life. But at the end of the day, we shot ourselves in the foot. We could have done things to adjust, and we just didn't. And at the end of the day, that was the reason we lost, not just the refs calling the game not exactly to benefit the Suns, to the benefit of the Suns. Disappointing to see Bridges fail to adapt his offensive game when his three ball stops falling. I really am too. I think we saw a lot, especially early in the season, where we got Mikal early or involved in the pick and roll, especially with Ayton and occasionally with Sarge and Kaminsky. But we didn't really see too much of that tonight. And I think when he's attacking the rim, he continually attacks the rim. And we didn't really see him attacking the rim until later in this game. I think that's been one of the biggest improvements in his game this year. It's what's really continued to open up his offense is attacking off the closeouts. But tonight he just did not do a good job of that. We really did not see that to the degree in which we needed to see it, which significantly hurt our offense. But it wasn't just Mikal. It was Sarge and it was Jay as well. I think even... although Cam did attack the basket, I think Cam Payne even fell into that trap a little bit, where there were some early shot clock threes from Payne that even though they were catch and shoot, I really just want to see him put it on the floor. I mean, he's a fantastic finisher around the rim, and his penetration is so significant to that back or to that bench unit, and we just really didn't see it to the degree that we needed to tonight. I don't want to put this game on Cam Payne at all. I think he played fine. I like the defensive effort I saw out of him, but his passing looked really bad tonight, which I do think kind of contributed to him settling for more threes because he absolutely excels in that penetration and kick out. And the Pistons were jumping the passing lane, not only for him, but for CP3 and for Book tonight, which really, really negatively impacted that off-ball motion. I think that we kind of got comfortable with the more stagnant ball movement. I mean, there still was some off-ball motion, but most of the motion was happening, especially when the plays were being initiated by CP3 and Ayton pick and rolls. And then there wasn't much off-ball movement while the ball was being moved around. I think that probably could have been a product. Blinding Edge, thank you so much for the follow. But yeah, no, I definitely think that that what we saw out of the ball movement or out of the off-ball motion tonight really killed our offense. With a 23-point lead, just gotta start running the clock. TBH, if your plan is to shoot threes, it's one of those things where I understand us continuing to shoot threes whenever we're up big, because that's what got us up big. But after that 8th straight miss, it's time to stop shooting threes early in the shot clock and get a fucking better shot. And it took us 16 threes to stop that horrible run of just jacking up threes. I really hate it. And I do think that, like I said, it probably is to some level an element of the Pistons jumping the passing lane, which led to more stagnant off-ball movement, because it is harder to find those cutters and that off-ball motion while driving for the ball movement. It's easier for ball movement whenever there isn't that off-ball motion. It's easier for it not to get picked off. But I absolutely think that led to our offense stagnating, which really negatively impacted us. 6 free throws is the entire differential of the game. That is sickening to see. I don't know. Really, the entire team outside of D-Book and Langston Galloway just couldn't find their shots. Cam ended up hitting a few. But we had an awful shooting night pretty much across the board. And it was rough to see. Honestly, I do not think they took the Pistons seriously at all, and it should in the starters. I kind of agree. I definitely think that we really were just the matchup of McHale on Jerry or on Grant. Just was tough. It was tough to watch all game. They were not a great size matchup for us. They're a good example of a team that we need to run Saric and Ayton with, but Saric was getting killed on the block, which he doesn't normally do. I mean, he's not a great post defender, but he's not somebody that normally just allows high volumes of low post touches, but he sure was tonight. But yeah, no, it was fucking tough to watch, man. The Booker Ayton pick and roll is absolutely crippling our offense too. Booker literally never passes to him off the pick. I definitely think they try to use the Ayton and Booker pick and roll more as an element to create motion, and because so many times, what I'm trying to say with this is so many times on those Booker Ayton pick and rolls, although Booker looks to score if he's open, a lot of the times it looks like his only goal is to get into the paint and then create kickouts, which either opens up looks for the three-point shooters, or it just generates ball movement. And I mean, we saw attempts at that tonight, but I absolutely would like to see him looking for Ayton more. As I mentioned early in the stream, the Booker to Ayton connection is at least a little bit worrying. Guards seemingly have a hard time getting Ayton the ball in the post, but Ayton's hands have been suspect. Hard to get the ball in the post and then continually get it slapped away. Ayton's hands definitely did not look very good tonight. There were absolutely a few plays that he just bumbled the ball. However, it's one of those things where if you can get him the ball where he needs the ball on an entry pass, I think he does a very fine job. Like when he has his feet set, his hands are solid, but oftentimes his feet are not set whenever the pass or the rebound comes, which leads to that bumbling. So the bumbling of the ball. He catches 100% of the passes that go above his waist. That's his problem. Honestly, Saric was forcing pretty medium shots in the post. They were dropping though. I mean, he hit a few, but I think that he did not get enough of his mid-range shots and post shots off tonight, especially when the offense stagnated. It was one of those things where he took way too high of a volume of threes and outside shots tonight, especially comparative to how poorly he was shooting it from outside. So that was definitely tough to watch. Also, I think there were moments in which we were trying to force it to Saric in the post, which led to one or two campaign turnovers, a Booker turnover, and I think one of the wings had a turnover trying to force feed it to Saric in the post when there was defense there. I think that Sarge is a guy who, if he catches the ball in the low post, especially within the movement of the offense, then he can absolutely capitalize it. But it almost seemed like we were trying harder to force the ball to him in the post at times than we did to Ayton, and I'm not a fan of that. I'm all for Sarge getting his post touches, but when Ayton has 3 shots at halftime, that's not a good thing for our offense. Booker's drives and dishes, do you think this continues throughout the season, or does he become more aggressive slasher? I think it really what really is going to determine it is entirely based off of the success that the Suns have. I think that we've continually seen him be more passive on those drives, especially off of the pick and roll, in large part due to the fact that we're winning. The offense is generating great looks. Cam and Jay and Mikhail, at least 2 of them, are showing up in most games. And when they're doing that, it's extremely beneficial to do that almost passiveness off of the penetration. But tonight it kind of killed us. And although he did stop being so passive, even in the fourth quarter, I definitely would have liked for him to see, we were 0 for 8 or 9 in our last few threes. Let me try to get a mid-range bucket off of this pick and roll, even though it's a little bit contested. I'm okay with a D-book pull-up contested mid-range more than I am a Suns three-pointer after watching us miss 8 or 9 in a row, much less 14 or 15 in a row. Hands in the face and bodied up. Ayton on the low post definitely seems to be underused. He's basically a bucket from there. I think Ayton's post feet work looked absolutely phenomenal tonight. I think the moments in which he did catch it cleanly and took a second with his back to the basket, I think he was extremely effective. I mean, he has fantastic post feet work, and his ability to get the shot over the defenders is fantastic in the post. I do not understand why we do not go to him more in the moments in which our offense breaks down. And I mean, we have this season. One of the big reasons why he had 20 against the Nuggets and 20 against the Clippers is because that offense broke down, and it was entirely necessary for Ayton to get those post shots off. And tonight, it was necessary for him to get those post shots off, but he just didn't get enough of a high volume post touches, especially from guard looks. Cam Payne's worst game in a Suns uniform, had 2 total turnovers this season, 3 tonight alone. He had some pretty bad turnovers, and like I said, I definitely did not like him settling for some of the threes that he took, especially early in the shot clock. I just think that he's way, way too important in the penetration aspect, especially when you have the guys like Javon Carter and Galloway, and sometimes even Cam Johnson in the game. And so we didn't see enough penetration out of Cam, and he shot poorly, and the turnovers were bad. So I probably do agree. I don't know if it was his worst game for the Suns, but it definitely was not a good game out of Cam Payne. I'm looking at the stats now. Chris Paul tonight, 11, 7, and 9, 5 of 11. I would also like to see Chris Paul become more offensively aggressive in those moments where our offensive ball movement breaks down, or our offensive off-ball motion breaks down. I think he still did a fantastic job of distributing the ball, and the moments throughout this game in which the offensive ball off-ball movement was at its best was, of course, when Chris Paul was on the floor. However, there were instances tonight where it was like, damn, Chris, like, please just go get a bucket. And he continued to be a bit passive, which I was... it's one of those things where it's not entirely shocking. I think that's what Chris Paul is trying to bring to this team. But tonight, I definitely think that although it didn't negatively impact us, it definitely was an element in which it could have gotten us out of some sticky situations, especially on several of the Pistons runs. But he continued to try to run the offense and set up looks for others. That's great. He did a good job of it tonight. But I definitely, in moments where the offense is breaking down and we just can't make three-point shots, I'd like to see Chris Paul really get the mid-range going. And he had a few moments where he looked like he was going to, and then just did not continue to hammer the mid-range. And I definitely think that negatively affected us. As I mentioned with Mikhail, I think this may have been his worst game. It's definitely a very, very strong argument for it. 6-8, 3 of 9 shooting, 0 of 4 from 3, 0 of 2 from free throw. It's really, really tough to watch our offense, which is so predicated on those 3-point shots when those 3-point shots aren't falling. And I just think that Mikal has an ability to drive to the basket, and I think we've historically seen that when Mikal does get to the basket and gets the layup going, sometimes it helps with the 3-point shot. Just seeing the ball go in the rim oftentimes can help a shooter's confidence and can help get the shots off with confidence. And I think that we didn't see that enough tonight out of Mikal, which was definitely disappointing. I've been saying in large that we need two of Mikal, Cam, and Jay to show up, and none of them really showed up tonight. Cam showed up a little bit, and I thought we were going to be okay because Langston Galloway kind of stepped up for them. However, he didn't get enough playing time in the second quarter, and then when he came back in the third quarter, he was cold, which I definitely was not a fan of. I understand that you can't necessarily just give a guy 20 minutes after he's been averaging 6 or 7 within a rotation. But I definitely would have liked to see more Galloway, especially coming from the fact that he was one of the only guys on the Suns the entire night that was knocking down the 3-point shot. I definitely would like to see more Galloway. I think he's a fucking flamethrower from 3, even whenever he isn't making the first 1 or 2. I really, really like the limited minutes in which we saw CP3 and Galloway on the floor together. They were on the floor together when he hit 2 or 3 of those threes on that 3-point shooting stretch. I think Chris Paul could absolutely get Galloway the looks that he needs, but we haven't really seen the Galloway and CP3 lineup minutes at all this season. I think tonight was maybe the second time this season where they've gotten longer than a few seconds together. And so I definitely would like to see more CP3 and Galloway action together, but we'll see. Who starts taking more shots first this season, Booker or Ayton? Definitely Booker, but I would like to see it be Ayton. Not that I don't want to see Booker take more shots, but I definitely think that if we continue to have games like this, and we will have more games like this, but I hope it's not a trend. But any shooting team, any high-volume shooting team is going to have off-shooting nights. And on those off-shooting nights, God, I'd fucking love if we just got it to the big man and gave him another 7 or 8 shots. And we did not do that tonight. So I would like to see it out of Ayton more, but I definitely think Booker is going to turn up the aggressiveness, especially if we lose to the Pacers tomorrow. Serious lack of aggressive cutting tonight, especially from Mikal. I completely agree. That is also in large part what I'm talking about with the off-ball movement, not just off-ball movement on the perimeter, but I saw a lot of backdoor or a lot less backdoor cutting, as well as just cutting off of screens off-ball tonight than we have seen for the rest of the season, and I think that was a negative or a serious negative contributor to the stagnant offense that we saw, especially in the third quarter. COVID seemingly starting to run rampant in the league right now. Does this mean we're going back to the bubble, and is this a guarantee that the Suns sweep the rest of the season and win the title? I hope they open up a bubble just for that very reason, but I will be absolutely shocked if they open up a bubble. At this point, the NBA has scheduled in a week or 2 period so teams can make up games, so I won't be shocked if teams begin to cancel games, and then at the point where we're in March of this season, I definitely think at that point the COVID vaccine production rates will be accountable enough so that the NBA can responsibly buy vaccines at that part, even though a lot of people will still not have the vaccine at that point. But I do think that you just got to power through this next 2 months, and I think that there is enough built-in time with the NBA that will be accounted for, and I'll be shocked if we have to see anything like the bubble. Anybody else I want to touch on tonight? Javon Carter. I really like him getting into the second layer of the defense and passing. He had 3 assists tonight, and he actually did create some offense for us. However, he really looks like he's more not scared, but more his tendency to pull the mid-range, especially that little step back mid-range that he loves to do, has been much lower over the last 2 or 3 games. I don't know if that's just because he started off the season shooting poorly, But I think he might have taken. Did he take 0 shots tonight? He did take 0 shots tonight. So while I love to see him getting into the second layer of the defense and creating for others, which we desperately needed tonight, I would like to see him settle for that mid-range pull-up occasionally. I think there are definitely moments tonight where he was open for it and decided to be more passive out of it. That is fine on most nights. That is what I would prefer on most nights. But when our offense is stagnating like this, or like we saw tonight, we just need more mid-range shots, and he had those mid-range shots available for him, and he did not take them. So I think Javon was very solid in his 15 minutes, but he didn't provide the offensive relief that we necessarily needed out of him tonight. And you can't put the blame on him. It's not his fault that our offense stagnated. Do not get me wrong. Other than that, like I said, I was extremely disappointed in Jay tonight, outside of just the continual quick shots that we saw out of him from deep, even though he went cold. I wonder what he finished the game. He finished the game 2 of 8 from 3, and I think he started 2 of 3 or 2 of 4. I think that it was tough, and we've seen Jay begin to drive the ball more, especially as a distributor. But at the end of the day, he did not attack the basket nearly enough tonight. And I think he was almost complacent at sitting still on the three-point line and waiting for the feed from CP3 or D-Book. And I think that is not only an element of him having an amazing shooting game last game, but also the fact that he made those shots early. I thought he was going to heat up again, and I think he thought he was going to heat up again, so he got more complacent on offense, which definitely negatively affected us, especially late in the second quarter and at the beginning of the third quarter. I think his defense, this might have been Jay Crowder's worst defensive game so far this season. He really did not provide the help that was necessary whenever Grant was getting going, and we had to switch McHale off of him. I think that what Jay Crowder has brought defensively for this team is he's kind of helped with those big body, very physical drivers of the basketball. I mean, we saw it against Zion. We saw it against Paul Millsap whenever Paul Millsap got it going early in the Denver game. And tonight we did not see that. Grant was just getting in to the paint with relative ease, even when Jay was guarding him. We saw it a bit with Siakam last night as well, where while Jay is a physical guy and can body up to physicality on a drive, when you get those really long guys who can just kind of step around him, he's not the most mobile comparative to those guys, and that can definitely hurt us, and I think that is a big stress point of our defense. And I definitely think there will be some teams that we just really, really struggle against because of that, especially Milwaukee. I am not looking forward to the Bucks games this year. I mean, if we get hot from 3, then we can beat anybody. Do not get me wrong. If D-Book goes off while our offense plays like it normally does, then we can beat anybody. But I think Giannis is going to be somebody who really, really kills our defense. And I honestly would be all in on opening up that game with Saric and Ayton and putting Ayton on Giannis. I mean, we saw that work his rookie year. I like the instances against the Raptors where Siakam was guarded by Ayton. And I do think Ayton is somebody that you can throw on them. However, with a guy like Jerian Grant and 2 bigs, Jerian Grant, Blake Griffin, and Plumlee, I can understand why we did not go that route tonight. You just really can't whenever there's a 2-big lineup, and the small forward is that physical driver of the basketball. But we're going to need more help on those drives. I think that we desperately needed more help defense whenever both Blake Griffin and Grant put the ball on the floor, and that showed up extremely obvious to me in OT as well as the fourth quarter. Agree, Carter more efficient when he is also an offensive threat. I completely agree. And it's one of those things where I've mentioned before that I'm all in on Javon getting those kind of heavy 15 to 18 minute games. Whenever we're playing a team that has fast or just bucket getting point guards or small shooting guards, teams like the Kings with De'Aaron Fox or even the Nuggets with Jamal Murray. However, the Pistons are not one of those teams. And so while his defense was nice tonight, although he did create several turnovers, I'm not sure that Javon was the best option for the 15 minutes that he played tonight, or 15 minutes exactly. And so I don't know. But in the same vein, Campaign wasn't playing well tonight, and we just weren't creating offense. So at that point, might as well have a good defender in there. But we need more out of Javon on the offensive end in games like this. I mean, we don't need it. We shouldn't have to rely on Javon. But there will be games where the shot's just not falling from some of our best role players, and we are going to need somebody to step up. And that was a role that was filled by Langston Galloway in the first half, but not in the second, and Javon did not step up. There were definitely some takeaways from this game overall, especially with the off-ball movement and the penetration-based defense. But it just was it was tough to watch. It was tough to see us build up such a significant lead with the absolute blessing that was that 3 or 4 minute stretch from Galloway, just to not make really any kind of significant adjustments along the way. It was tough to watch, it was frustrating to watch, and it was painful to watch. I think that this was easily my least favorite Suns game of the year. I was a bit frustrated after the Kings lost the first time we played them, just solely because I think that game was a loss entirely dependent, entirely dependent upon the rebounding of that game. There was one specific area where they just fucking killed us, and it lost us the game. And tonight, there were a lot of really bad areas. We didn't rebound to the degree that it saved us in any regards. Our shooting was piss poor. Our offense stagnated. The defense did not look good, as I've mentioned many times already, against the penetration especially. And once they got it going in the lane, even though the Pistons are not a good three-point shooting team, it just allowed them to get wide open looks in overtime. And that was the game once those started to fall. I think that if we had played defensively tonight, or if we played defense like we did tonight against the Raptors, we'd probably lose that game as well, just because the Raptors are a better shooting team than the Pistons. So I think that there are a lot of areas to improve on. And really, I think D-Book played some solid defense tonight. I think that he played better than he normally does, which is worth a mention at the very least. But really, the only person I saw step up at really any given moment for our defense was DeAndre Ayton. I think Ayton still had a very solid defensive game. There were a couple of those foul calls that were unfortunate with DA, but he was contesting the rim well. He was stepping up, but it just was one of those things where they were finishing well, and there were so many instances in which Mikal and Jay were just giving Jarian a clear line at the basket, an easy penetration, and it's one thing to step over early to contest a shot attempt at the basket. Whenever there's some kind of defense there, when there's some kind of element of slowing the player down a step, even if it's just by a step, even if you still get beat, and there were a lot of instances tonight where we didn't even slow him down a step, where he was just exploding towards the basket, and that was all she wrote from the primary defense. So I liked what I saw out of Ayton defensively. I really liked what I saw offensively, but 6 of 7 is really fucking annoying. When he's 6 of 7, he should not be shooting 7 shots in a loss to the Pistons. I do not understand that. This should be a game where Ayton takes 15 shots. He did not take half of the shots he needed to tonight, and his shot was looking great. He was getting fantastic looks in the post, so it just really does not make sense to me. And then the rebounding was really, really solid out of Ayton tonight. That continues to be incredibly, incredibly important for this team. I still am a bit nervous by the degree of importance or the degree to which we rely on Ayton's rebounding, which we saw at times tonight. However, the one thing I will say is I did like what I saw out of Mikal on the boards. He wasn't necessarily boxing out very well. He is not somebody who boxes out at a high level of consistency, which also in part is because we use him to run the quick offense, with the quick attack offense. We have him running the floor rather than rebounding many times. But in those instances in which we're relying on him to box somebody out, he doesn't always do a great job of that. Although he didn't box out well tonight, he attacked the rebounds really, really well. He was getting the rebounds at the height, at the pinnacle height that he could get them. And I think that there were some promising things there. I'm absolutely a believer that if Mikal bulks up even a little bit, he could be a fantastic rebounder for us just because of his length and athleticism. Tonight he did a solid job, but I would like to see that continue to progress. I think that's going to be incredibly, incredibly important, especially when we're running the lineups with the 4 perimeter players. So that's the turnovers were extremely sloppy as well. The Pistons were just jumping in the passing lane. And then when they went up to that matchup zone, they were daring us to shoot it, and we continued to shoot it because they were daring us. And that was just honestly fantastic game planning by Dwayne Casey, because he saw we were missing and said, okay, beat us from the 3-point line. And we said bet, and we failed to do so. When we lose to a zone, that just screams to me that we did not penetrate and attack enough, which was extremely disappointing that we did not adjust to. And then I kind of want to finish off with the idea or the thought that I was really underwhelmed with Monty Williams' final play call in the fourth quarter. You have 4.4 seconds left, and 2 of the best fourth quarter bucket getters in the NBA, and the drawn-up play was essentially in isolation and no off-ball movement and a Booker go get a bucket at the elbow. And that's fine. We've seen Booker do that before. The shot almost went in. But at this point, we have too much offensive talent not to at least incorporate them in the out-of-bounds play so that Booker can get a better look than he did. Grant played great defense at the end there. But it was a disappointing night on so many levels, both from individual players' perspective, from our team offense and defense, and even from coaching, both with the out of bounds play and just the lack of adjustments made throughout the game. So it's incredibly disappointing, and I'm nervous about this Pacers game tomorrow. Coming off a back-to-back, coming off an OT game, those are never good. And I think that from the few games that I've watched of the Pacers this year, they are looking absolutely fantastic. They are a team that can penetrate well, and I think that unless if Sarge shows up in post defense tonight, it's going to be a long night with Miles Turner and Sabonis. That is a team that will run a 2-big lineup at least several minutes on the floor, and we're going to be relying on Sarge to step up in a way that he did not tonight. And I hope we do. I would like for us to bounce back strong after this poor performance, but you also have to take into the context that it's a back-to-back after an OT game against one of the teams that is rolling most prominently in the NBA right now. So I am not necessarily excited. I do kind of want to review some of the comments on the post-game thread, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and call it. Man, that offensive foul in OT, what the fuck was that? I'm assuming he's talking about the pick and roll with Booker and Ayton, where I think they called it on Booker. I'm still not entirely sure. That was an absolute bullshit offensive foul call, and there were definitely a handful of those. The refs in no way helped us tonight. In fact, there was quite a good amount of bullshit, but at the end of the day, we played poorly, so I can't place an emphasis on that. Galloway had 17 points in 9 minutes, was on fire from 3, only played 3 minutes the rest of the night. What? Yeah, I completely agree. and that was incredibly frustrating to watch. Couldn't touch them on defense. Suns player breathes free throws for the Pistons. It definitely felt like that instances tonight, so I understand why the Suns subreddit feels that way. Let's be happy that the Suns had a shit game like this. Shows them that they can't rely on hot 3-point shooting every night. Hopefully the players recognize this. I completely agree. The shot was falling early, and then it stopped falling, and we just continued to rely on it. We got comfortable shooting the three, and in many games, the threes have just absolutely won us the game. I mean, we shot 50% against the Raptors from three, so I understand it. But hopefully, this is a good learning lessons for the Suns. The Suns are now 0-3 when outscored by opponents. I hate to see that comment, and I hope we don't see it too many more times. I love the ones that when we win, though. Terrible from three, terrible when it mattered in OT. Whoever was calling this a potential trap game was spot on. It really was spot on. It seems no one besides Ayton knows how to play help defense without leaving someone's ass naked or leaving someone ass naked open. I completely agree. Our penetration defense when Ayton is off the floor, it's brutal at times. Like it's really brutal at times. And Ayton's not even necessarily a classical rim protector, but he is somebody who does a much better job than anybody else on the team on help defense, especially on the penetration. Let's see if anybody has responded to my 5 takeaways, and I can respond to them live. Gonna hijack and say this. I'm all for criticism where it's due, and we deserve all of it for how we played tonight. That being said, if any of our fans start overreacting and start questioning the whole season, then we need to go outside and relax. This isn't football where we get one game a week. This team will be just fine. We'll be fine. It just seems worse since it was a bad team we lost to. We will be okay. I completely agree. I think that team subreddits so often have the tendency to overreact to games, both when we win and both when we lose. I mean, I was seeing Suns championship contending posts after we started 5-2, and I think that this is a good reminder to pump the brakes, that we are a playoff team, and when we're hitting our shots, and 2 of Mikal, Jay, and Cam are playing well, then we're going to be tough to beat. But at the end of the day, this is not this is not a team that will be able to just blow teams out every single night. Teams very rarely are. So I definitely think this was a good comeback to reality game to some extent. But at the same time, I still absolutely believe the Suns are one of the best teams in the NBA, especially when our defense is working. I mean, we're one of the best perimeter defending teams in the league. However, when there's that high level of penetration, we're going to have to adjust. We're going to have to find a way to adjust, or our defense will not finish a top 5 defense. I continually said in those early games that we were looking like a top 5 defense and borderline top 3, and we have not looked like that these last 2 games. And it's because of the penetration, and it is something that drastically needs to be addressed, especially against specific teams. There's a -11 comment. I kind of want to see what it is. Genuinely sick of seeing this Twitch channel spammed everywhere. Post a ready-made comment in the postgame thread and plug the Twitch channel rinse repeat. Why aren't the mods stopping this? Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, dog. You don't have to watch the Twitch. You don't have to read my postgame takeaways. I am providing feedback that I'm seeing throughout the entirety of the game. If you don't like it, you don't have to pay attention to it. And I apologize if it's annoying or if it's beginning to get annoying. But I am enjoying this or doing these analyses. I'm enjoying the activity that I'm getting from fellow our Suns users. And I do have a lot of fun doing this. So I will be doing this for the rest of the year. So I'm sure it will just continue to be more annoying to you as the season goes on. Let's see. I appreciate all of the comments responding. That genuinely means a lot. Wubby123, thank you so much. Relax, let that man do his thing. It isn't bothering anybody. Thank you so much. Like I just said, you do not have to pay attention to me. If you don't want to read those comments, if you don't want to see my Twitch channel links, you can close my comment the moment you see it. It will always say main 5 takeaways from the game. You can hit close on the comment, and I promise you I will feel no type of way. It's understandable. I mean, it's long form analysis. and it's not necessarily for everybody, or you might not agree with my opinions, and that's completely fine. You don't have to. In fact, if you disagree with my opinions, I recommend you coming on and letting me know in the comments, and I'd love to engage in a dialogue about why you think my opinions are either wrong or misguided. Why it's good Suns analysis. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. I have definitely put a lot of effort into it so far this season because it's great, thoughtful analysis after every game. Just read the top part and ignore the link. I completely agree. Thank you for saying it's thoughtful analysis. That genuinely does mean a lot, and I really love the positive feedback. And I agree, you don't have to click the Twitch channel, you don't have to watch the stream. You can completely ignore that part if you want. I'm trying to provide analysis for fellow Suns fans, and if you don't want that extended analysis that comes with my Twitch streams, you don't have to partake in it. Like I said, that will not hurt my feelings in any kind of way. If it was bad, thoughtless analysis, yeah, burn him, but he's not. Be cool, dude. Thank you so much. I do put a lot of effort in these analysis, and I have always been a huge Suns fan. I mean, I've watched 60 games each of the last 5 years, and in some seasons getting up into the high 70s. I've been a Suns fan for a long time, but watching Suns games while breaking it down, while doing these analyses throughout the entirety of the game, really brings a new level of enjoyment for me. I really do loving it, or I really do love it. So I definitely appreciate the feedback. Thank you so much to everybody who defended me in the replies. That genuinely means a lot. This community is the absolute best. Trade Kendall Jenner. This man is spitting facts. Losing to a 2-3 zone is embarrassing as hell. I completely agree, especially whenever we have good offensive threats that can get into the defense where the zone is especially vulnerable. One of the things that the zone is really horrible at addressing that we did not take advantage of tonight is wing rebounding. Wings that crash the offensive glass during zones oftentimes have free pathways to the ball, oftentimes not boxed out. And we did not see that tonight. And I think that not only did they play zone to dare us to shoot, they also were able to play zone defense because we didn't capitalize on the weaknesses of the zone defense, which again is just an element of poor coaching adjustment. I think Monty is a great coach, do not get me wrong, but I definitely think this was the most underwhelming game out of coaching game planning, as well as coaching adjustments. The bench had a hell of a game. I definitely think that our bench continues to show that they are the necessary spark that is so important for this team. I mean, just about every single game that we've won, the bench creates. It's not even necessarily the bench, but the conglomerate lineups with bench and starting rotations is really where we begin to break open leads, and then we're able to maintain those leads throughout the game, which is absolutely something to be proud of from the starters' perspective, but they did not do that tonight. And although the bench provided that necessary first quarter spark, the starters just did not capitalize upon that. And when I say starters, I don't just mean starters. I mean the first 8 men on our rotation. I was bragging so heavily about our 8-man rotation, including Payne, Johnson, and Saric with the starting 5. And tonight, 3/4 of those 8 did not show up, or did not show up to the level in which we needed them to show up. So just a tough game. We just refused to do anything other than shoot threes. Way too many turnovers. Missed our free throws too. Overall, just a pathetic performance. These are the games you have to win. I agree with everything except for that last sentence. These are games that are nice to win. These are games that you would expect to win. However, great teams, not great teams, but very good teams, will drop games like this continually throughout the season. I mean, we've seen other very good teams drop very easy games. I mean, the Nuggets started out 1-4. But at the end of the day, this is a learning lesson, and I do think that these are kind of important along the way, especially for a team that is not necessarily. It's a nice thought to think that we're a contending team, but we're realistically a 3rd or 4th seed, a realistic ceiling, one that has a legitimate probability, but also the upper end of that legitimate probability. And those teams lose games like this. That's just a matter of fact. Obviously, they hurt significantly worse in a 72-game series or a 72-game season. But at the end of the day, I do not want to overreact. Sometimes good teams lose to bad teams, and that's okay. Blowing a 20-plus lead is not. I feel gross. Now, that comment I fully agree with. The fact that we squandered Langston Galloway shooting flamethrowers out of his hands in the first and second quarter is obviously extremely disappointing. Ayton could be one-on-one down low like Nate Robinson, and Booker would throw it out of bounds. Jesus, that's hilarious. All right. Well, on that note, again, this was a disappointing game. There were a lot of negative takeaways from tonight. However, I hope there are a lot of negative takeaways from Monty and the coaching staff as well. I hope that all of this stuff that I talked about is addressed in the film room tomorrow. And I hope that we at least see some kind of adjustments from the Pacers, especially if we come out shooting poorly in that game as well. Back-to-back games shooting poorly would definitely not be fun and could link to a very long game tomorrow. I know I'm not ending on a positive note tonight. I definitely think that the Suns team is still very, very good. I think we've seen absolutely enough out of them this season to say that. However, I hope this is not the moment this team takes the foot off the pedal. With that being said, thank you so much for checking out the stream, especially all of y'all that stayed all the way through. That genuinely means a lot to me. Like I said, I just absolutely love doing those. And I will see y'all tomorrow after the Pacers game.